You mentioned indirect taxes, GST, and I have a couple of questions on GST, and I'd like to start off by asking you, there's been, originally when GST was framed, the direction was always that it would be simplified over time, it would be rationalized over time, and depending on how revenues look, if they look good, that there could actually be a reduction in rates. And there was significant simplification both on the process side and in terms of rates and grouping of various products and everything else. But of late, there have been two issues that have come up. The first one is an issue that's been raised by the states, and they've raised it with you, which actually affects the federal compact between the center and the states, because the states are saying we have not been paid, and they've been told that there might be a little bit of a delay in that. So
have they been told that?
At least that's what they are suggesting, right? I don't know whether they've been told that, which I'm hoping you will tell us now.
Yeah, so the compensation is one. Will you ask me the other two later?
I will, once we finish this, yeah.
GST, I think, is a good law, and it is very required for a country as large as India. It is required also because we've had more than 50, 60 years of looking at India as one market, but India as several markets. Each state becoming a market, each state having its own law on a certain, taxation on goods and services. So it was only right that, and it was only right and timely that we got the GST Act. All right, even as we brought it in, there were a lot of pushes and pulls, which, of course, again, I'll go back to recalling that it was only the personality of Shri Arun Jaitley, backed by the Prime Minister, which could bring all states together to have a consensus and agree to what could be the first version of a GST. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been possible, considering even then the pressure was on the government saying, you can't even get a GST through. Repeatedly questions were being asked. And I think at that time, due to this kind of a very taking everybody on board approach, it was possible. At that time, states had applied their mind. I'll be fair to everybody. Every state had applied their mind to say existing VAT regime, existing excise regime, and therefore with a revenue neutral mindset, what could be the taxation band to which a certain set of commodities could come in. All this was in detail discussed over several meetings of the empowered committee which existed before the GST Council. The GST Council consists of all the finance ministers. It was all agreed, and a certain framework was given which was acceptable to everybody. Now, post that, and I'm not blaming anyone here, equally all of us went about in every meeting of the GST Council reducing the taxation rate of certain set of commodities, another set of commodities later, a third meeting, a third set of So end of the day, the intentions were good. You kept reducing, kept reducing. Now, reduction per se is not bad, but the GST structure is such that when you have a certain rate and you have also the input tax credit being passed, just to put it simply, I buy some raw material, I pay tax for it. With that raw material, I produce something else, I pass that on to the buyer. But when I pass that on to the buyer, for the tax that I paid, I reduce a certain sum and only carry forward that excess of tax to the next buyer from me. So that input tax credit each time is loaded onto the tax that you would pay and set off to that extent, and it goes. Now, if because you're looking at wanting to reduce the tax on certain number of items, you kept reducing, reaching a stage where the credit was no longer a credit. Credit was minuscule because you reduced the item of the tax on the raw material. The offset, therefore, was lesser. You ended up transferring more taxes to the buyer because the credits were lesser here. End of the day, now you have a new set of people saying, why are you taxing us more? It wasn't like this before. We are not taxing them more, but this reduction here on some items has ended up passing the burden on to the final one, which was otherwise earlier taken care of. So I'm not saying People did this thoughtlessly, but in an enthusiasm to reduce more taxes, that framework which was originally agreed at stage 1 of the GST has got distorted. As a result, you suddenly feel, oh my God, it is much worse than what happened in stage 1 of GST. That was after a lot of consideration of how much eventually will go to the consumer, because it's a consumer consumption end tax. So those distortions have crept in. Now, in the meanwhile, you're also looking at wanting to get more information so that there is no discrepancy between one and the other, one state and the other state, because after all, goods are moving from one state to another state. This meant that more information in the form of filing forms also got in. People thought when you're bringing in technology, it'll be a couple of keystrokes and finish. I've filed my return. Yes, that should be the end goal. But if you're also wanting to gather more information because you want to pass the benefits here and there, and you kept enthusiastically asking the assessee to give one more information each time, the tax per se is getting complicated because of this unstructured bringing down of rates. Another, it's also getting complicated because you want to be sure that you're doing everything correct, but ending up asking for so much more information in a technology-driven system. People just get fed up of wanting to give so much information. So we have problems in both the hands. That is where it's got into a stage where today, gladly I must say, all over the country, we've asked anyone who wants to talk on the simplification of filing processes to please go tell the officers. If you're physically not going, please through email or through some addresses that we've given, let us know through some kind of a digital way what you want to do to simplify the forms. Rate structures are GST Council's business. I'll take it to them. Eventually, we'll of course have to rationalize. Do we want so many slabs? Do we want to have just 2 or 3 slabs? Original intent was that we'll have just the 3. Merit, sin, and the standard. Just the 3 rates. Today what has happened is, in a sense you have 3 rates, but you're having too many complications. So we are addressing that. I can only give a confidence to the audience here and through you to many others that we shall have a very good streamlined GST and address the issues for the assessees.
But what about the...
Sorry about the long answer.
Yeah, no, but what about the payment to the states? Because...
A 14%, and that will get compounded every year, compensation was assured for the states, which we are honoring, which we shall honor, which we shall continue to honor. And that compensation was going to be through the collection of a certain cess, GST cess. The cess would be collected, and clearly from the cess collected, states will be given the compensation 14%. Unfortunately, in the last collections, the cess component has been not so adequate to compensate the states per 14%. So, if we've reached a stage now where the collection was inadequate to give, this is an open fact, because anyone can go into the GST collections and everything else and see it. So, obviously, the compensation has not gone through to the states. That's not to take it to the level of saying, oh, that compact has been broken. Oh, no. The cess fund, if it's there, I'm going to give it. It's not there, but we are also making clear to ourselves as to how we can do it. We are not talking about even touching the compact. We have to honor the compact. So let there not be any doubt about what's happening to the compact. Oh, no. We shall honor it. But the reality is this. So I just want to put that in. And states, some of the finance ministers came and met me. I've heard them out. And what they're raising as an issue is absolutely genuine. There's no question about its genuineness.
All right. On GST, and I know this is a council decision, it's not, you're not going to take it unilaterally. Is there also going to be a rethink to take up some of the rates because collections are low?
Well, as you said, yes, it is the GST's call, Council's call.
But directionally, is that something you would consider, which you would think of doing?
I may not be able to preempt the Council on this by saying anything now.